You're probably feeling it right now. That slight anxiety mixed with envy as you watch younger people or even peers talk about their cryptocurrency investments. Maybe you've seen Bitcoin hit new highs and thought, man, if I'd gotten in 5 years ago, I could have retired early. You're 45, 50, 55, or maybe even 60, and time is actually starting to feel finite in a way it didn't when you were 30. You've got maybe 10 to 20 good working years left depending on your health and how much you enjoy your job, which, let's be honest, is probably not that much. The pressure to figure this out is real, and cryptocurrency has this seductive narrative attached to it, especially for people in your demographic. It's positioned as the great equalizer, the thing that separates the people who understood the future from the people who didn't. You don't want to be left behind. You don't want to be the person who had the chance and didn't take it. And all these young crypto millionaires on the internet seem to have figured it out, so how hard can it really be? The only problem is they're not telling you the full story. I help people understand not just how to make money, but also how not to lose it, which is actually way harder than it sounds. If you're over 40 and you're wondering whether now is actually the time to jump into crypto, or if you should probably think twice before dumping your life savings into digital coins that mostly don't do anything, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it helps clarify things for you. I'm going to be brutally honest with you over the next few minutes in ways that financial advisors pretending to care about you probably won't be. Now, before we dive into why crypto is specifically dangerous for people in your age bracket, let me paint you a picture of what I see happen constantly. Someone hits 40, maybe even earlier, and suddenly the math of their situation becomes impossible to ignore. They look at their retirement savings and realize they're not on track. They didn't save enough in their 20s and 30s because they were paying for kids or a mortgage, or they just didn't understand the power of compound interest. Yet maybe they took time out of the workforce to raise a family. Maybe they had medical emergencies that drained their savings, or maybe they just lived a normal life without thinking too hard about compound interest and time horizons. Now that realization has set in, they're panicked. They look at their bank account and see numbers that seem inadequate. They do the math and realize that even if they save aggressively for the rest of their working years, they're still going to be short. The future looks scary. And when humans panic about money, they make the worst possible decisions. They start looking for shortcuts. They start researching things they don't understand. They convince themselves that if they can just find one good investment, they can make up for lost time. And boom, they discover cryptocurrency. It's perfect. Right? It's supposedly decentralized, it's growing faster than any traditional investment, and everyone online is talking about getting rich from it. Here's the thing that actually happens when you're over 40 and you get involved with crypto. You're starting from a position of fear instead of abundance. You have limited time, limited capital, and limited recovery options if things go wrong. A 25-year-old who YOLO'd his entire savings into Bitcoin has time. If it crashes 90%, he's devastated, sure, but he has decades to recover. If it crashes 90%, he can keep working, rebuild his capital, and try again. He might even buy more at the lower prices, becoming richer over time from his mistake. But you don't have that luxury. If you're 50 years old and you put $100,000 into crypto thinking you're finally going to get ahead, and it drops 80%, you don't have 30 years to wait for it to recover. You might have 15 years until you need that money. And suddenly you're not just behind where you started, you're catastrophically behind. This is why cryptocurrency is specifically dangerous for people in your age group. It's not that crypto is inherently evil or that you can't make money from it. Some people absolutely have made money from it. But the risk profile doesn't match your life stage. When you're over 40, with limited time horizons and real financial obligations, you shouldn't be making high-risk bets on speculative assets that can lose 80% of their value overnight. You should be making what I call boring progress, reliable progress, the kind of progress that actually compounds into something substantial over time. You know what would have made an enormous difference for someone who's 50 right now? If they'd invested $500 per month in a simple index fund starting at age 35. Not crypto, not individual stocks, not anything fancy. Just boring, stupid index funds tracking the overall market. That $500 per month for 15 years is $90,000 in contributions. With an 8% average return, that $90,000 would have grown to roughly $160,000. That's wealth building through the most boring method imaginable. But here's the thing that nobody wants to hear when they're feeling panicked about money. Boring works. Boring actually compounds into something meaningful if you give it time. But people over 40 don't want to hear about boring. They want to hear about the person who turned $1,000 into $1 million with one crypto bet. Those stories do happen. I'm not going to pretend they don't. But for every person who made that bet and won, there are 100 people who made the same bet and lost everything. The media doesn't cover those people because the story of someone losing their entire retirement savings to a speculative bubble is depressing rather than inspiring. Let me tell you about what I call the opportunity cost problem, and this is probably the biggest issue that people over 40 face with crypto. You have limited time and limited capital. Those two constraints together mean that every dollar you put into a high-risk asset is a dollar you're not putting into something that could actually work for you. Let's say you're 48 years old and you have $50,000 that you've managed to save. This is money that could be a genuine game changer for your financial future. If you deploy it correctly, you could put it into a diversified brokerage account and let it grow. At 8% annual returns, that $50,000 becomes roughly $115,000 by the time you're 60. That's not going to make you rich, but it's real money that could bridge the gap between where you are now and where you need to be in retirement. But instead, you decide that crypto is where it's at. You've done your research. You've read Reddit threads. You've listened to podcast interviews. You're convinced that this is finally your moment. So you put all $50,000 into Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever the current hot crypto is. Maybe you get lucky and you're up 50% in 6 months. That $50,000 becomes $75,000 and you feel like an absolute genius. You're telling your friends about your investment. You're bragging about how you finally figured out the secret to getting rich. Then, because you're human and because cryptocurrency volatility is genuinely insane, the market crashes. Bitcoin drops 30%. Your $75,000 is now $52,500. Not terrible, you still have some gains, but the momentum is gone and you're starting to panic. Most people at this point make the worst decision. They hold, hoping it bounces back, but it doesn't. It keeps dropping. It goes to $45,000. It goes to $35,000. Now you've lost $15,000 of your actual capital, and you're sitting there watching your money disappear and feeling completely helpless. This scenario happens constantly, and the worst part is that you took a dollar that was going to work for you reliably over the next 12 years, and you made it gamble instead. That's not investing. That's speculation. And speculation is what broke people use to try to get rich quick instead of what smart people use to build wealth systematically. But let's say you got incredibly lucky. Let's say your Bitcoin investment actually paid off. You put in $50,000, and through some combination of luck and timing, you managed to turn it into $200,000 over 2 years. Congratulations, you're technically successful. You feel vindicated, you feel smart, you feel like you finally cracked the code. But here's the psychological trap that gets most people. Now you think you can do it again. You've proven you have the ability to make life-changing money. So you take that $200,000 and you try to replicate what you did. You've tasted success and you want more. You look for the next opportunity. Maybe it's a new cryptocurrency, or maybe it's some other get-rich-quick scheme. And a lot of times, you end up losing it all, or most of it. This is called the regret cycle, and it affects wealthy people just as much as poor people. The problem is that you got lucky once, and now you think luck is actually skill. I've watched this happen so many times. Someone hits it big on a crypto bet, feels invincible, and then loses it all on the next one. They go from feeling ahead of the game to feeling devastated, and they're back where they started, but now they're older, and there's less time to recover. Here's something else that's important to understand about your brain when you're over 40 and you're looking at making financial decisions. Your risk tolerance is probably lower than you think it is, but your risk behavior is probably higher. This is a dangerous combination. Your risk tolerance is lower because you have real responsibilities and limited time. You probably have a house, maybe kids, maybe aging parents. You can't actually afford to lose money, but your risk behavior is higher because you're panicking. You're worried about the future. You're feeling left behind, and fear makes us do stupid things. We convince ourselves that we can handle the risk because we feel desperate enough to take it. This is why people who should absolutely know better end up putting their retirement money into cryptocurrency. They know on a rational level that it's risky, but emotionally they feel like they have no choice. And crypto marketing is specifically designed to exploit that feeling. Every crypto ad is basically saying the same thing in different words. Look at all these people who got rich. You could be next. The only thing standing between you and financial freedom is your willingness to take action. Don't be the person who had the chance and didn't take it. It's targeted precisely at someone who's over 40, scared about money and running out of time. And it works. It works really, really well. Now let's talk about the actual mathematics of cryptocurrency returns versus boring investments, because I think this is where a lot of people get confused. There's this narrative that says if you had bought Bitcoin in 2010 and held it until now, you'd be rich beyond imagination. And that's true, but it completely ignores survivorship bias. It doesn't talk about all the people who bought Bitcoin in 2017 thinking they were geniuses, held it through the 2018 crash, sold at a loss, and missed the entire recovery. It doesn't talk about all the people who bought Ethereum at its peak and watched it drop 90%. It only talks about the people who made money, which of course makes it look easy in hindsight. Let me show you what actually happens if you compare cryptocurrency returns to boring index fund returns over different time periods. If you had invested $10,000 in the S&P 500 in January 2010 and held it until January 2024, you'd have roughly $60,000. That's about 500% returns over 14 years. That sounds okay. Not amazing, but solid. Now, if you had invested that same $10,000 in Bitcoin in January 2010, you'd have more money than I can even discuss because it's not helpful to this conversation. You'd be richer than anyone can imagine. But here's the thing. You didn't invest in 2010. I didn't invest in 2010. We're looking at this from 2024 with complete hindsight about which investment worked. What if you'd invested $10,000 in Bitcoin in December 2017, right at the peak? You would have watched your investment get cut in half. You'd be sitting there in 2018 and 2019 convincing yourself to hold on while everyone was making fun of Bitcoin. You'd finally recover around 2020. And then you'd make some money. But what if you panicked during the crash and sold? What if you held but missed out on the opportunities in 2020 and 2021 because you were too traumatized from the loss? This is the reality of crypto that nobody wants to talk about. The average person doesn't have the psychological constitution to hold through the volatility, and they shouldn't, especially when they're over 40. If you're going to invest during your working years, the last thing you need is something that's going to keep you up at night. Stress from financial uncertainty actually shortens your life. I'm not being hyperbolic. Studies show that financial stress increases cortisol levels, which damages your immune system and accelerates aging. So not only might you lose money with crypto, you might literally age faster from the stress of worrying about it. Compare that to index funds. With an index fund, you check it maybe quarterly. You don't think about it most days. It just grows in the background. The volatility exists, but you're not constantly checking your phone to see if you made or lost money today. You're not losing sleep. You're not stressed out. You're not making panic decisions. This is actually worth something, and most people completely undervalue it. The peace of mind of boring investing is worth more than you probably think it is. It's priceless, honestly. Let me tell you what you should actually be doing if you're over 40 and you've got money to invest. And I mean this seriously because getting the order right actually matters. First, if you have any high-interest debt like credit cards, that's your first priority. Not crypto, not index funds, not anything else. That debt is actively working against you. Credit card debt at 20% interest is worse than any investment opportunity you can find. You will literally never make 20% consistently in any market. So paying that off is a guaranteed return that crypto will never give you. Second, you need an emergency fund. I'm talking about 3 to 6 months of living expenses sitting in a boring high-yield savings account. This isn't exciting. It's not going to make you rich, but it's going to save your life the moment something goes wrong. And something always goes wrong. Third, you need to be thinking about your retirement accounts. If your employer offers any kind of retirement plan match, that's literally free money, and you're leaving it on the table. If you're not taking it, max that out before you do anything else. Fourth, and only after you've done all the above, you can think about investing additional money. And even then, it should go into diversified, boring index funds, not crypto, not individual stocks that you read about on Reddit, but actual boring diversified funds. Now I'm going to tell you something that's going to sound harsh, but I mean it with care. If you're over 40 and you're considering crypto as your path to financial security, you're probably not going to get rich. I know that sucks to hear. I know you want there to be some magic bullet. I know you want there to be a way to make up for lost time in a hurry, but the math just doesn't work that way. The average person doesn't have the capital to make life-changing money from a percentage gain. If you had $100,000 and your crypto investment went up 10 times, yeah, that would change your life. But most people don't have $100,000 sitting around. And more importantly, turning a 10 times return consistently is not something that happens to normal people. It's a fantasy. What actually builds wealth at your age is boring consistency. You save money. You invested in index funds. You keep doing this for the next 10 to 20 years, And through the power of compound interest, you end up with enough money to retire. It's not exciting. It won't make for good Instagram posts, but it actually works. I've seen it happen hundreds of times. I've never seen someone get rich from cryptocurrency, but I've seen a lot of people lose money from it, and I've seen even more people get rich slowly through boring investing. There's also something about the psychology of crypto that specifically targets people in your situation, and I think it's important to understand this. When you win with crypto, even if it's a small win, your brain releases dopamine. You feel good, you feel smart, you start looking for ways to replicate that feeling. Maybe you start buying more crypto, maybe you start talking about it constantly, maybe you start trying to convince your friends to buy it too. This is the same psychological mechanism that makes gambling addictive. And yeah, I said it. Crypto, for most people, is a form of gambling, not investing. There's a difference between an investment and gambling. An investment is when you put money into something that produces value, like a business or real estate or a diversified portfolio of profitable companies. Gambling is when you put money into something, hoping that the price goes up for reasons that have nothing to do with its underlying value. With crypto, you're mostly gambling. You're hoping that someone else will pay more for it than you did. That's not investing. And gambling becomes more dangerous when you do it from a place of fear. Desperate people make bad decisions. And people over 40 who are worried about money are desperate. I understand that. I get it. But understanding that you're vulnerable to making bad decisions doesn't give you permission to make them anyway. It gives you permission to protect yourself. If you're over 40 and you genuinely want to make more money, there are better paths. You could increase your income. You could start a side business. You could learn a valuable skill and charge more for your time. These aren't sexy. They're not going to go viral on TikTok. But they work. I know someone who spent 6 months learning digital marketing, upgraded his skills, and got a promotion that increased his salary by $20,000 per year. The $20,000 is way more reliable than trying to get a 10 times return on a crypto bet. But here's the thing about that path. It requires work. It requires you to learn something new. It requires you to put yourself out there and risk rejection. Crypto is appealing specifically because it doesn't require any of that. You can just buy it and hope. You can be lazy about it. And our brains are wired to prefer lazy paths, even when they're statistically likely to fail. Now let me address something that I know you're thinking right now. What if crypto actually does explode? What if I don't buy it and then it goes up another 10 times? Won't I regret not taking the risk? Sure. You might regret it, but here's the thing about regret. Regret is temporary. If you buy crypto, lose your money, and have to work 5 more years until you can retire, that regret is going to last a lot longer. The regret of missing an investment opportunity fades relatively quickly. The regret of losing your retirement savings lasts until you die. This is an asymmetric risk situation, and you're looking at it backwards. The downside of losing money is much worse than the upside of making money because the downside affects your actual life, and the upside is just theoretical. When you're over 40, the game isn't about hitting home runs anymore. It's about not striking out. You can't afford to strike out, so the rational move is to swing only at pitches that are actually in the zone. Crypto isn't in the zone for you. It's way outside, and you're going to either miss or hurt yourself swinging at it. The real wealth building for someone in your age bracket looks boring. It looks like maxing your retirement account. It looks like investing in index funds. It looks like increasing your income if you can. It looks like reducing your expenses where possible. It looks like being patient for the next 10 to 20 years while compound interest does its work. It's not glamorous. There's no narrative around it. Nobody's writing articles about the guy who retired comfortably by contributing consistently to his 401k. But that guy exists, and he's not stressed, and he's not going to lose everything. And he's going to actually make it to retirement. Let me be very clear about something. I'm not saying crypto is worthless or that you should never think about it. I'm saying that if you're over 40, financially behind, and worried about money, crypto is specifically a bad bet for you right now. If you had already built your financial foundation, if you had your retirement maxed out, if you had an emergency fund, if you had your house in order, and you wanted to take 2% of your portfolio and gamble on crypto, fine, do it. You can afford to lose that money, but that's not your situation. Your situation is that you're behind, and you need to make smart moves to catch up. And the smartest move available to you is boring. It's consistency. It's compound interest. It's believing in the power of time. Even though time is your scarcest resource. Here's what I want you to do. If you've been thinking about crypto, if you're feeling tempted by it, if you're seeing YouTube videos about crypto millionaires and feeling left behind, I want you to do something instead. I want you to calculate how much money you'd have if you invested $500 per month in an index fund for the next 10 years. Assume 8% annual returns. Do the math. See what number you end up with. Then imagine that you could actually do that. Imagine that you could set it to autopay and then completely forget about it. You'd never have to think about it. You'd never have to worry about volatility. You'd never have to check your phone in the middle of the night worried about a market crash. And you'd end up with real money, actual money that you could use. That's not a bad outcome. That's actually a great outcome. The only thing that makes it seem bad is that it's boring and we're culturally conditioned to believe that only exciting things are worth doing. But that's a lie we tell ourselves. The unsexy things are usually the most powerful. So do yourself a favor. If you're over 40 and you're thinking about crypto, take a step back. Think about your actual financial situation. Think about what you need. And then think about the most boring, most reliable path to get there, I promise you. That path is going to work better than chasing crypto dreams. Your future self will thank you for making the smart decision today instead of the exciting one.